lovers of movies, TV show, and literature. Are you ready to shake things up? You may call me Luke Garou. And for those of you who are returning, welcome back. For those of you who are new, hello and welcome. We are here to feast on my opinions of all things movie, TV, and book. And today we are going to be feasting on a book and a movie series. It's Hobbit, a case study. And we are looking at J.R.R. Tolkien's children's novel, The Hobbit. 6 of my flavors. And for those of you who do not know, who are new, a flavor is any actor I can binge watch from his oldest work to his newest work, nonstop, without getting bored. And thus far, I have not had a flavor have a character that made me want to stop watching him. I've had a few flavors whose personal lives made me not want to watch them anymore. But that was very, very, very rare. Now, stop moving around. I'm going to get a lot of grief for this. I prefer the movies. No. Don't tear me apart. The Hobbit is a great novel. It is. And it is full of the most epic depictions you could possibly imagine. However, the conflicts are rather toned down. And for someone who happens to want to see conflicts resolved, having the battle end because Bilbo was knocked unconscious and he wakes up and hears about what happened after it's already finished, that's not a satisfying resolution for me. And the way I look at it is that the book is what Bilbo tells everybody else. It's the story he tells his fellow hobbits. Because, yes, it's thrilling, it's exciting, but there's no real stakes in it. Exactly. He goes there and he comes back. It's a perfect linear story. And the movies, all 3 of them, are what he experienced and what he lived through. And knowing that he comes from a peaceful race of beings who prefer to stay comfortable in their homes with their pipes and their gardens, they are not going to appreciate being chased by wogs. They're not going to appreciate an epic battle of mountain giants. They're not going to relish a fight amongst burning trees. Yes, unless it's Frodo. Frodo loved the more harrowing, the more un-Hobbit-like aspects of Bilbo's story. Probably because he was very much like his uncle. So, that is why I like the movies more than the book. The movies are his actual adventure. And I can hear it in the comments right now. Legolas. Now, people are giving the movies a bunch of crap because Legolas is never mentioned anywhere in the book. Point of fact, his father is not mentioned by name. Threnuel does not appear in this book as a named character. He is described as the Elf King. So, while he is living his adventure, while you are on his adventure with him, of course you're going to see the people he doesn't know the name of. Unless somebody out there is going to tell me that a little homebody who spent 55 years in the Shire knows Elven enough to distinguish names from words. Because books on languages don't have names in them. They just have words. And they don't even have all the words a language is going to speak. They just have the most common so you can communicate relatively well.
And even letters. They could look like a place, not a person.
Yes. My camera woman just pointed out that letters could look like a place and not a person. So, there is every chance he ran into Threnuel's only surviving child while he was locked away for 3 months. And to make the 3 months of boredom in the Elven Kingdom more exciting in the story, instead of just like, yeah, I spent 3 months studying the guards' patterns so I could get all of my conveniently placed dwarves out of there. He doctored it up in the book and said, no, the Elven King was so mad he scattered the elves to the four corners of his kingdom, scattered the dwarves, not the elves, to the four corners of his kingdom, and I spent all that time having to find all of them because none of them were anywhere near each other, and in the farthest, darkest reaches, that's where I found Thorin. That's thrilling in a children's novel. That is highly impractical for such a xenophobic race as Threnuel made his wood elves to become. And I say xenophobic because he does not like outsiders in his woods. When his father became part of the Dead Marshes, he sealed off his elves so that no one else could hurt them. So having 13 strangers in different corners of his kingdom, where any one of them could have had any chance of escaping other than Bilbo, is too much of a risk. He's going to want them all right where he can see them and the guards can pounce on them quickly, if needs be. So that's another divergence of Bilbo telling his story and us watching his story and living his story with him. And people who give Keely and Tariel crap for having a relationship, like I said, 3 months in the dark. Well, dark-ish, because the Wood Elves did actually live underground, which is fascinating when you actually study them. Because Dol Guldur was Threnuel's father's keep. But because he had so many memories of his father, he couldn't bear to live there. So he brought them into a chamber deep under Mirkwood. And he only patrolled the woods above that chamber. so nobody could get to them. Very, very riddled with PTSD, Threnuel is. He lost his wife, he lost his older children, he lost his father. In his mind, he was protecting his people and he was protecting his son by doing what he did. Yeah. So, to say Tauriel and Keely couldn't have actually started to have a rapport after 3 months, Bilbo wasn't with them all 3 months. He couldn't watch them 24/7 without risking being caught. So, of course, Keely, who is the youngest of the troop at 77. Yeah, he's the youngest dwarf at 77. His uncle's 195 years old. Man, he looks good. Thank you, Richard. Seriously. Richard looks good as a 195-year-old dwarf. Aiden's the 77-year-old.
And you 40-year-olds can look good as a 195-year-old dwarf.
That is true. Yeah, anybody in their 30s and 40s is going to look good as any dwarf older than them. Though, and also to say Threnuel didn't have a female captain of the guard, again, that Bilbo didn't know the name of, or didn't care enough to learn the name of, is rather insulting when you realize that Galadriel was a warrior in her own right before she decided to settle down and just rule her people. The Wood Elves and the Rivendell Elves and the Lothlorien Elves, they're all warriors. They all know how to fight. It wasn't a, oh, you're a woman, you can't do that, like with the race of men. They were all, no, you need to defend yourself, you need to defend our home, because what good is all of us fighting and dying if you're going to get slaughtered? You're going to die anyway, you might as well die on your feet defending your kingdom. Now, I was watching one person who was giving this movie series a bunch of shade, and he had the audacity to call Bolg an unnamed villain. Pages 281, 284, and 285 all mention Bolg by name. Page 25 mentions Azog by name. So please tell me how they are unnamed enemies. Because they're in the book. Page 25. Your grandfather Thror was killed, you remember, in the Mines of Moria by Azog. That tracks. And honestly, another reason why I like the movies is because they made Thorin a little more relatable in how he slowly got mad the closer he got to his home, and that it took all his people talking and trying to nudge him to actually shake off the dragon sickness. And when you read the book, like I said, it's an awesome children's novel. In the book, these guys are sitting in the dark for weeks after Smaug leaves. They have no clue Smaug dies. The movies actually had them go out the way Smaug left to see whether or not he came back. The very fact that they tried to actually fight him seems way more in character for the dwarf nation than just sending one hobbit to rankle him enough so he runs away. But again, the hobbits of the Shire will not want to hear about people, in their opinion, needlessly putting themselves at risk against something as dangerous as a dragon. So, for his hobbit and more pacifist listeners, we were trapped, we were stuck in that mountain for weeks. We didn't know what was coming or going. Instead of, oh yeah, we tried this and we tried that and we tried the other thing, and then he broke out and went after Lake Town. Far more plausible. And the barrel riding is also more plausible to have the elves trying to stop them. Because to say they got in and Bilbo helped them escape without all these guards noticing is an insult to Threnul's security measures because of how paranoid he is. And like I said, Threnul by name is not in there. You do not learn Legolas's father until he enters Lothlorien in the Lord of the Rings books. So, them adding his name from the beginning made it easier for Bilbo to go, okay, we're going to deal with this person. This is what he's called. I have a vague idea of how he's been described. But they also added, for the movies, some of the deeper lore from the Silmarillion, fleshing out Threnul's character more. Oh, yes. My camera woman just reminded me, what the heck is the Silmarillion? That is a thick book that is basically the history of Middle-earth. It talks about the gods, it talks about the creation of each race, it talks about when humans first arrived, it talks about how Sauron got his power, it talks about Ungoliant, which you hear about in The Hobbit, some sort of spawn of Ungoliant when they're talking about the spiders. And those babies are actually the offspring of Shelob, who's in the mountains close to Moria. Fun little thing there. But it also talks about why Thorin goes mad a little more. It explains more of him watching his grandfather succumb to the madness and watching his father start to get affected, and then Smaug shows up. In the extended scene, Gandalf tells Thorin, your father, Thrain, gave me this to give to you when the time was right for you to go after that dragon. Thorin was very unhappy about that because it's like, it's my birthright. Why are you keeping it from me? And as sad as I am that they kept out a lot of my favorite songs, like Down to Goblin Town, when they're in the mountains and they get dropped into the goblin tunnels. I liked that song. But I also liked that instead of having Thorin sitting aloofly ignoring his 12 other companions in favor of talking to Gandalf during Blunt the Knives, they had him appear after it was over. Because honestly, what's worse? I'm going to let my younger nephews terrify and bully somebody we're supposed to have on our team and who's supposed to trust us and help us. But I'm going to ignore them in favor of talking to Gandalf about Merlin knows what. Or, dang it, I got lost, Gandalf. This place is boring. It's the same. I prefer the I got lost. If it wasn't for the mark on the door, I wouldn't have found this place. Truly. Because in the book, when Bilbo pop-gunned the door and everybody fell, they all fell on top of Thorin. How upset would that make somebody? To have all your companions fall on you because you're sort of leaning back on the door to address them and the door opens and you fall over. Not a very dignified picture. But it would be something the hobbits would find humorous because you made dwarves look stupid. That's kind of funny. Again, something for the hobbits, but not necessarily what he lived through. The hobbits love their riddles. So, of course, he extended the Battle of Riddles with Gollum. Whereas in the movie, 20 minutes of riddles would be rather boring to watch. 20 minutes to a half an hour of nothing but riddles back and forth. Because they give like 7 or 8 riddles. I didn't actually count, but they banter a lot of riddles back and forth.
Are you saying Bilbo's a liar?
My camera woman just said, are you saying Bilbo's a liar? Nope. I'm saying Bilbo's playing to his audience. And all good storytellers do that. And again, this is why I like the movies. Because it would show everything Bilbo didn't want to hear. Or didn't want his hobbits hearing. And the deaths of Fili and Kili in the movie are far more harrowing and gut-wrenching because they could have been rescued or not been in that situation to begin with. Had Bilbo arrived 5 minutes sooner and said, hey, another army's coming. We got to get off of this area. Technically speaking, by the time Bolg's army was supposed to arrive from the north, Bilbo was already unconscious because he's like, the eagles are coming. Back to the head. Excuse me? That's what happened. So for Bilbo to experience the loss of 2 people he had actually grown to care over his 2.5-year journey, instead of saying, yeah, I watched them get dragged. I watched the eldest of the nephews get dragged out and dangled like a carrot in front of a horse before he was impaled like a stuck pig for a barbecue. And then we didn't even know Kili died until after we found his body. Again, having been run through somehow. He went, no. He gave them they stood up and acted as living, breathing shields for their uncles. They died heroically in battle. There was nothing to be done to save them because they wanted to protect their mother's eldest brother. No, eldest brother. Frenan died earlier. He's not mentioned at all in The Hobbit. You read about him in the Silmarillion. But shh, that's a different book, and I severely doubt they'll make a movie about it. It's an encyclopedia. Who wants to watch a movie about an encyclopedia?
People that like documentaries.
I'm sure you heard my camera woman. She said it would be a documentary. So yeah, they could do the Silmarillion if they wanted to do a documentary. And making Bilbo appear less greedy. Like, it was only one small chest and it still smells of troll. Is sweet and very becoming for the little fellow. But in the book, he's like, I got all this gold, and the first thing I did when I got back was I spent it on lavish gifts, leaving only one small chest to retire on. Which is great. Had the people of the Shire in Hobbiton not showed they did not care one whip about Bilbo Baggins as an individual being, soldiers normally have 5 to 7 years to come back from a conflict before they're declared dead. He wasn't even gone 3 years and they declared him dead. And they promptly auctioned off all his stuff. It's like, okay, I have to prove I'm me because you've made so much money off of my belongings. And what's really sick is it wasn't a, oh, hey, by the way, we're sorry, here's your money back, give Bilbo his stuff back. It was like, no, we got this at auction, you have to pay us twice what we spent on it for you to get it back. Lovely people. It's probably a good thing they didn't show the fight in the Shire that happened at the end of Return of the King. Because Saruman's story in the books does not end at Orthanc and Isengard. It ends in the Shire, where the Sackville Bagginses had sided with Saruman to get more wealth and power than they perceived they already had. I think Otho ended up dying and was consumed by Wormtongue. I can't remember. I just know it was gruesome. But there was a battle in the Shire, in the books. Time, money, filming. You couldn't have put that in the movies. So they just cut it off. Which is fine. But, again, we're talking about The Hobbit, not its sequels. These are my opinions. Feel free to disagree. But do you prefer what Bilbo tells his fellow hobbits? Or do you prefer living his adventure? Because a lot of the dry spaces where Bilbo is waxing very philosophical for his hobbits was cut out in the movies. So you actually saw what Gandalf was doing. You not only walked Bilbo's life, you walked Bard's life, Threnduil's life, the dwarves' lives in the movie. Instead of just, oh yeah, by the way, these were this, and they sang this, and this is why we were walking. It's like, no. We spent so many weeks walking. And I saw this, and I saw that, and I saw this. We're going to take all of that out, and we're going to show you what Gandalf did. Because what Gandalf did had a major impact on the Lord of the Rings quest. Had they not confronted the necromancer in Dol Guldur, and he not sent his army to attack Erebor, Middle-earth would have been wiped out by the time Frodo was born. Because he wouldn't have lost all those troops at Erebor. He would have had his bats. He would have had more spiders. He would have had more wogs. He would have had more... They actually call them goblins, not orcs. It's kind of funny. But he would have had more troops that weren't human mercenaries. So, showing how Gandalf shaped Middle-earth for future generations. Oh, gee, that's fantastic. Because, again, their stories are interconnected. Everything Bard did, everything Threnumel did, all had a ripple effect down the ages. There was a speculation as to what would have happened had Thorin survived. He would have shaken off the dragon sickness. He would have rebuilt Erebor. He would have sent 2 teams to Moria. Instead of one team going in one way, he would have sent 2 teams 2 ways. So they would have pincer moved the goblins so that Moria wouldn't have become a tomb. I mean, the way they fleshed out the what would have happened was just as compelling as, hey, this is what Thorin did. So this is everything Thorin did. It would only be natural, since he shook off dragon sickness, he would be stronger, so he would be able to do all this. I mean, they also had him living very long. It was awesome. If you haven't noticed, I do love Thorin as a character. Even if there are times I just want to shake him. What the heck are you thinking, you idiot? Don't shake a dwarf. They don't like that. They'll probably hit you. And again, these are my opinions. Feel free to disagree. Have you seen the movies? Have you read the book? Will you do either? Don't take my word for it. Because like I said, I love the movies. I like the book, but I love the movies. And like I said, it helps that 6 of my flavors are in it. But even if they weren't, with the way it was filmed, it would still be a compelling movie with the way my mind functions. Leave a comment below. And please keep it civil. Kindness is the key to understanding, after all. Find the like button and tend to whatever injuries it may have acquired through overuse. Rescue the subscribe button from zombies. And smash that bell to draw the zombies towards it and run in the opposite direction. And I'll see you next time. Bye.